All right. I'm Joe Turner, and I'm the host of City Manager Unfiltered, a podcast by a city manager for city managers and other public sector executives. And with me today is Benjamin Effinger. He's with LA County. Ben, why don't you tell us what you're doing with LA County right now?
Absolutely. So I've been with LA County for about 10 years now, but my current job is working in their treasury management operation for the treasurer and tax collector. I oversee our daily cash flow and positioning for the county, which has, operating budget in excess of $40 billion. And our excess money then gets invested in our treasury pool that's about 55 billion plus. So on a daily basis, we got a lot of money moving, and it's an important job that half the time I can't believe that I fell into position to have.
Well, I was actually going to ask this. I didn't know that aspect about your background. With the recent increase in interest rates, have you seen anything interesting change with how you handle that excess cash flow or cash on hand over the last year or so?
Yeah, we're actually with the feds, chiming in and having points and the different things that they're doing. We've been investing a lot more short-term money. We've been doing a lot of daily investments, short-term paper. Theoretically, we want to invest 3-year, 5-year, eventually some 10-year, some buy and hold. Our strategy is really to ride the wave, not to, short sell or take a loss or try to get in while it's high. We try to buy and hold and let everything kind of work its way out. But we've seen some historic interest rates, in the treasury pool this last probably 18 months to 2 years, where we've been averaging, above a 3% return, in some cases 5% returns on some of our investments. And those don't sound like big percentages, but when we're talking about investing, hundreds of millions of dollars at a clip, that turns into quite a substantial amount of pocket change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially when interest rates were so low. I mean, you had municipalities all across the country that were literally. I mean, in my little town, we were getting 0.05%. I mean, you invest $1 million, you're getting like five eight hundred bucks a year on $1 million. So with the recent change in interest rates, I know it's impacted a lot of balance sheets to the positive in that regard. But before we get to a sort of discussion, you have a military background. We're going to talk about some of that aspect of your background and how it plays in the public sector. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown of where you come from, how you got into the public sector, so forth and so on?
Yeah, we'll try to speed through this so that way we don't eat up the whole podcast on talking about my background. I was born and raised in northern Wisconsin. My grandparents were dairy farmers, so that's pretty much where I learned my work ethic and baling hay and milking cows and all the kind of good stuff. And then we moved to the Twin Cities when I was in high school. Did high school in the suburban east area of St. Paul. I went to Woodbury High School. When I graduated from high school, there weren't a lot of options on the table. My family being farmers and factory workers, scholarship money wasn't available. And really, there just wasn't a path right into school right away. So the military became a good option because I knew I wanted to go to school eventually. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. So I enlisted in the Air Force, left 9 days after I graduated from high school, went to basic training, did 8 years in the Air Force. I was a military police officer by trade. So a lot of cop skills, did nuclear security, presidential security, criminal investigations, a bunch of different stuff. Started my career off 2 years in Minot, North Dakota, then pivoted out to Andrews Air Force Base, Maryland. That's where I got to do my Air Force One duties and really got to see and do a lot of cool things, but all the while taking advantage of the education benefits that the Air Force had to offer. I did my whole bachelor's degree while I was on active duty during that 8 years, paying for it with the tuition assistance that's available for active duty folks. So when I separated after 8 years, got out not only with 8 years of experience as a cop, but also a bachelor's degree under my belt. So I was kind of set for that transition. Where I got to that transition point was, I had drawn a set of orders to take another squad back to Iraq in 2009, I believe it was. And I had been there already once. I'd had some friends that went and did convoy operations, and one of them got rocked by an IED, and just it wasn't the same look and feel. And it was okay when it was me. It was okay when it was me and my wife. But once my older boy came around, it kind of changed the tide for me. So we made a
Absolutely.
family decision to separate. And when I separated from active duty, already having my bachelor's degree, I really got to sit down and kind of figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I took a Took a nice little transitional step into a local community college in the Maryland area, became the security director for a regional community college while I got my master's degree in public administration. And that was my jumping off point. We did a coast to coast move 2 years, about 2 years out of being out of the military in 2012 to move to Southern California to be closer to my in laws. My father in law had gotten sick, and we wanted to be closer to be supportive for family. And my golden opportunity opened to become a part of Los Angeles County, and that's been my history since.
Awesome, awesome. Let's back up for a second because you're taking the bachelor's in while you're enlisted. I'm sure there's a lot that do take advantage of that opportunity, but I also feel like there's probably quite a few individuals in the military who really kind of they don't take advantage of that opportunity and they really waste that time when they could be preparing themselves for life after the military. Right? How hard or difficult was it for you to get your bachelor's while you were in the military?
I started off taking classes when I was in Minot, North Dakota, right? And I went to Minot State University, a brick and mortar school, and was trying to juggle it in as, actually attending classes while working full time. And, I took two classes, was relatively successful, but quickly realized that, probably doing brick and mortar school while being in the military was probably not going to work out. So I quickly pivoted to online education through American Military University just because it was a lot more flexible and was able to travel with me. You hit on a great point, though. You get when I was in, and again, take this with a grain of salt because this is 15 years ago or so. We got $4,500 a year as tuition assistance. That was free money that was on the table. And at the time, I think my courses were like 750 a clip. So you can take 6-8 courses a year for free on the DoD's dime. So I was just chipping away constantly, taking year after year, maxing out the number of courses I could take. And before I knew it, I had finished 120 credits and had a degree under my belt.
I think that's the thing that impresses me about you, Ben. We haven't really had much personal interaction, obviously, because we met on LinkedIn. It's all a virtual digital landscape, right? And you post regularly about your journey because you're currently in pursuit of your doctorate. And when I see you posting on LinkedIn, it's not like, hey, look at me, I'm this big shot getting my doctorate. It's more of you just saying, hey, I'm on the grind. I'm working this through. I'm committed to bettering myself. I'm committed to providing a better life to my family. And you show this work ethic and you show this commitment and hard work. And so I find that really impressive and inspirational from my standpoint when I observe you, because I know you're up early and I know you have these family commitments and whatnot. And we're going to get into the doctorate journey in a minute because it's pretty impressive. But do you chalk that up to that dairy farm lifestyle, which is hard living, or like, I mean, because I mean, you're not slacking, brother. You're not slacking at all.
No, I appreciate that, and it's really what I'm attempting to do is just proof positive that it can be done, right? No matter what our circumstances are, if we have a goal, it's attainable. And really, for myself, I know what I didn't have or what opportunities weren't available to me on the path that was prescribed for me. And it's not that I couldn't go out and make it for myself. It's just coming out of a working family and not a clear path to college being available to me. I had to go out and kind of figure that out for myself and hustle and grind to do it. And that has really led me into continuing this pursuit. I'm also a competitive individual. My wife just finished her doctorate through Azusa Pacific University this last year, so she beat me to the finish line. But we're just trying to show our kids, what success can potentially look like, right? It doesn't have to be one clearly defined path of what success
Right.
can look like. For me, success, was 8 years of going into the military, then pivoting to a non-government job for a couple of years, then getting into a government job, all the while there was almost a 10-year gap between me doing my master's degree and starting my doctorate. And it doesn't mean that just because you stop that you can't pick it up again. You've just got to find that life cycle balance to be able to put it together.
Right. I had about a 10-year gap between my master's and my bachelor's. But, you talked about showing them what success looks like. And I'll tell you, what you're showing them is that success isn't instant gratification and it's not, overnight results. It's like you got to put the work in. And I think there's an issue with our current generation that seems to think that, they can just pick up and start where their grandparents left off, and they think that, hey, I don't need to put in 40 years of work to get to where my grandparents got. So I think it's a really impressive message that you're sending to your kids, very inspirational. And, you kind of let the cat out of the bag with your wife already getting the doctorate and whatnot. So let's just jump into that, because when I first heard that aspect of your journey, brother, I was like, wait a minute. So you and your wife were both getting your doctorate at the same time, overlapping, and you have kids and you got full-time jobs. And brother, I grew up in Southern California. Okay. So I know SoCal life is difficult, man. Okay. It's difficult to put food on the table. It's difficult to get it's difficult to get out of your driveway, let alone get to work. You know what I mean? So how the hell are you juggling all of this stuff? Break it down.
We were gluttons for punishment. If we went back to Maryland when I first got out of the military and decided I wanted to do my MPA, my wife was getting her master's in education at the same time, and we literally lived by a flow chart that was magnet, to the refrigerator, right, on who had classes or deliverables on what day.
Right.
We had my my older son at the time. He was about 2, so we would trade off the household responsibilities. My wife was a full-time teacher. I was working full-time as the security director at the community college. And it literally was like 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday with a bowl of cereal and my laptop, just getting it done. Right. And
Yeah.
it just
Getting it
became
done is the key. Just getting it done. Right.
and I remember explicitly with my master's degree, I was writing a 4.0, everything was going fantastic, and I misread the syllabus and I turned in a paper in the wrong format, and the professor was absolutely ruthless, didn't give me an opportunity to fix it, and automatically took 10 points off the top of the paper, and I lost my 4.0 all because I didn't pay
Oh,
attention to the syllabus. But you know
oh,
it's okay. I finished with a 3.96, so
that's impressive, brother. That's impressive. But here's the thing, right? So obviously it's not common for two people to be getting their doctorate at the same time. You're an outlier for sure, right? But even just getting your even just one member of the family getting the doctorate at a time is pretty difficult, right? So
absolutely.
how do you handle that right now as far as in your current situation? Can you break it down to a little more of a granular level, because
Yeah,
there's going to be
absolutely.
individuals who are thinking about going to get a doctorate, and I think I shared with you one time on LinkedIn. I was just like, man, I'm exhausted and scared and tired even just thinking about the idea of trying to get a doctorate, let alone actually going through the process of doing it, right? So walk us through how this works.
Yeah, so the first thing you've got to decide is whether you want to do an online school or whether you want to do a brick and mortar school. That's a real big decision point, because there's a lot of quality programs that are online, virtual based. There's a lot of quality programs that are brick and mortar, right? It was important for me to do brick and mortar because I did both my bachelor's and my master's online, so I wanted to get that cohort brick and mortar experience for at least one of my degrees. My wife was the same way. She did traditional undergrad, so she went to a 4-year school. She got her master's online, and she wanted to go back to a brick and mortar school for her doctorate. So that was the first component to it, is figuring that out, because those require different time commitments, whether you're going to be online versus a brick and mortar.
Massively
Uh,
different time commitments, massively different, especially in
yes,
Southern California where you got these commutes. I mean,
Absolutely. Well, we're fortunate enough that in Glendora, Azusa Pacific is 10 minutes that way, and University of Laverne is 20 minutes that way. So we kind of figured it out, from that perspective, that we don't have to travel very far. But rolling that down, when we both decided that we wanted to do brick and mortar school, she started first. She started in 2019 with her program path. It was interesting because then the pandemic hit, right? So she was supposed to be going to online in person, or on campus in person school. And then quickly it pivoted to, kind of this hybrid online some of the time type environment. And her cohort met on Saturdays. So like all day Saturday, like she would leave at like 7 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't come home until like 6 o'clock at night. So it would be me with the boys at home while she was doing, 4-hour class in the morning, 4-hour class in the afternoon, group projects, whatever, all that stuff in between. And just because you go to class all day Saturday doesn't mean you get everything done
right. It doesn't
that
stop there.
Saturday,
Yeah,
right?
it's not over.
So you've got to plug in time, and we don't have the luxury, most traditional PhD programs, right? You go on scholarship, you get a stipend, like you're being a teacher's assistant, like that's your full-time job. Whereas doing it as a professional, you've got to maintain your full-time job, you've got to figure out this school thing, and then if you've got a family on the side, that's the other ball that you've got to juggle. So really, it was me being in that support role for the first couple of years while she was doing her degree. And then it got to a point where I decided, well, it's time for me to go back. And then realizing that my military education benefits expire in 2025. So I had to give myself enough space to start the program and get far enough along in it so that way I could finish before my military benefits expire. And then I would have to start to pay out of pocket for my degree. So realistically, my first year in my program was my wife's third year. As she was wrapping up, I was starting in and
Right.
just getting ramped. And really the linchpin to that was, my mother-in-law and some extended family that's out here in the area, because then they were able to step in, take the boys on Saturdays and do things where
Right.
when we both had
That
commitments.
family support, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You being in the military for 8 years or whatnot, overseas for a period of time. I'm not sure exactly how long you were overseas, but in that dynamic or that environment, you would have had more of a traditional sort of gender role assignments, I would imagine, right? Because you're out in the overseas, your wife's home taking care of everything. You get back, you had to make an adjustment to sort of pivot and support each other, right? Was that hard at all for you to become Mr. Mom, so to speak, and do that juggling act, or not really?
No, it's been a challenge for me, right? Because my wife organically, I mean, she's a school teacher. She's got the patience of Job. Like she can, that's I joke that that's why she married me, because I'm a little dense and hard to handle, and them teaching skills that she has comes into to play. But it really is a little bit more difficult for me because I'm a type A personality, very rigid individual. My military structure and training is always in the foreground of my mind, and rolling that back and being able to be present with the kids for a day. Sometimes
Children
that's
love children love type A, right?
right. It's a challenge for me at times, right? It's like
I
I gave
bet.
you a list of things to do and I told you to do it in this order, and
Right.
you're in the corner playing with Legos, and it's like that wasn't on the list, right? So
Yeah.
it definitely was a challenge and an adjustment, and it took a lot of practice for me to get comfortable in that environment. And it's still practice because I'm not 100% there. I don't have the abilities that she has that translate, from her professional
Sure.
job
Absolutely.
to
Yep.
her, her home ability to be able to take care of the boys. But I roll up my sleeves and do what I can. And if there's not things that I can do that are directly with the boys, I know what my responsibilities are at home as far as laundry goes, as far as dishes, whoever cooks doesn't clean, right? We have these different roles that kind of we've fallen into that make sure that it may not be a straight line 50-50 split, but it's
Right.
definitely a shared load at home. There's not an
Right.
expectation that just because she's at home, or she's not, in school right now, that 100% of the weight falls on her. We still have a balance.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point that you make, right? Because there's going to be points in time in your guys' work and school schedules where, hey, I can't give you 50%. I might barely be able to give you 20%, maybe even less,
Right.
because I got to focus on this thesis or this exam or whatnot. So I'm sure it obviously takes a lot of communication and patience with each other as well as spouses.
Oh yeah. No, we religiously, we have a Google Calendar, right? And it's set up for the family, and anything that's happening, like before you say yes or no to
You
anything,
check that calendar, right?
you consult the Google Calendar, right? And
Yeah,
if it's
yeah.
not on the family calendar, it doesn't exist.
So what's the motivation for your? I get your wife being a teacher, a doctorate. It seems like naturally in line. Maybe she wants to go and be, in administrative role or something like that. What is the reasoning or motive for you to get your doctorate? Because I hear a lot of people talk about doctorates, and it's just like you put in all this time and energy, and it's very rare. I very rarely see any articles or studies that say, hey, getting your doctorate pays for itself, right? Like it's a lot of time commitment, it's a lot of money. Is this more of a personal pursuit, or is it to send that message to your kids and be a positive example, or is this a professional reason behind it? Walk me through this. Why
So
why
I'm
why you glutton for punishment?
so we're gonna go back to this type A personality, right? Like I have
Okay.
everything planned out to a T.
Oh
So
god, you're one of those guys. All right.
I've already done my homework, right? At 52 years old, I will have 31 years of county service, counting my military time. I'm going to punch it. There's going to be time for career number two afterwards, and my career number two is going to be in the classroom. I have a goal to
Okay.
teach, train, and mentor the next generation of public servants. And in academia, a master's degree doesn't get you very far, right? So for our
True.
profession in
Yep.
public administration, right, like the MPA is the terminal degree. Like everybody sees that as like the gold standard, right?
Yep.
A doctorate in public administration, people are really like, what's the value add that this thing does? It gives me the ability to switch from practitioner to an academic.
Got
and
you.
get me that credibility that I need to get in the classroom, help build curriculum, bring in real world experience, 3 decades worth of public service, and bring that to life in the classroom. Because a lot of faculty, and this is not a knock towards faculty, but they go on
Nope.
that route of bachelor's, master's,
It's
PhD,
terrible.
or whatever.
I'll go on
And
that route, brother. I hate it because I
and
want
they
you to
they
have real
talk
life
to you about
experience.
theory all day
Yeah.
long, but they've never taken it out in the world and thrown it against the wall and watched it fall on its face. I love going to class, learning a theory, going out to work that week, throwing it against the wall, and coming back the next week and saying, "Hey, that was great what you taught us, but in this operating environment, it don't work."
Yeah. It's funny, a shameless plug for my podcast, but one of the reviews on Apple podcast reviews was the things you don't the Melissa referring to my podcast was like the things you don't learn in MPA class or MPA school, And I just I get frustrated by the classroom environment. I think education's fine. I'm not anti-intellectualism or anything like that, but man, give me somebody who has real world skills and experience over book knowledge any day of the week. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
that's just my mindset on that. I think it's awesome that you're looking to take your actual hard work experiences into the classroom and teach the next generation. What are your ultimate goals then now for your public sector work before you go into academia? Where do you aspire to do? Become I don't think you're looking to become the city manager of LA County or a county manager for LA County or anything like that. But what,
If that door opened, I probably wouldn't say no to it. But the chief administrative officer of LA County, being responsible for 11 million residents, and
talk about glutton for punishment, huh?
yeah,
I
yeah, I,
mean,
I don't know if that's in the cards, but LA County's got 40 different distinct departments, 110,000 or 115,000 employees across the board. Where I'm seated right now in the treasurer and tax collector, our department's got about 500 employees. I am in a senior management role now. Probably in the next couple of years, an executive role is going to open up that I see myself competing for, but ultimately I've got about 15 good years, 16 good years left in the tank before I decide to punch it on the master plan level. And I could see myself as a department director, right? If my name was on the top of the tax bill going out to all the constituents in LA County, I don't think that would be a surprise to myself, because I think I'm on trajectory to get there.
you foresee yourself spending the rest of your career inside of LA County, not going out to a municipality or anything like that?
Most likely, and the reason for that is because LA County's got its own self-contained ecosystem, right? We've got our own retirement program, we've got everything built in, and the benefits that we have are phenomenal. If I was to pivot out of LA County and go to another jurisdiction, either I've got to do all the reciprocity stuff, or
Yep.
I've got to take a step backwards if they're a CalPERS program, right? Because Lucerne and CalPERS don't play the best together. So it would really be a challenge unless I wanted to bookend LA County and then just start fresh somewhere. Which,
Got you.
if the academic role doesn't work out, then maybe I punch in at 31 from LA County and take my show on the road to the municipalities.
So when you look back now on this journey from the military into the public sector, right? One of the things I really would like to explore in this podcast was the types of benefits that are available, not only to servicemen and women who are, leaving the service and going back out into the civilian world, but how do those benefits also translate in to the family members of these service members? I was wondering if you can start walking us through some of the benefits or things that family members should be aware of, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about you know transitioning veterans, right? It starts where everybody thinks about the education benefits, the housing benefits with your
The
VA
GI Bill,
loan.
right?
Yep, the,
Yeah,
the GI Bill.
right.
Then your VA home loan, right? Your VA disability and compensation if you're entitled to anything from your bumps, scratches, dents, and bruises from your military service time. Like those are the given benefits that everybody needs to file for or take advantage of when they get out. But there's a lot more things when you peel back the layer of the onion that don't necessarily meet the eye, right? And everybody thinks that you have to be the veteran to be able to be entitled to these benefits. And when we talk about educational benefits, for example, right, the GI Bill, the post 9/11 GI Bill, the service member themselves doesn't have to use
Well,
it.
hold on a second. So,
Okay.
is the GI Bill and the post 9/11 GI Bill the same thing?
There's different variations of the GI Bill. There's
Okay.
a Chapter 30 GI Bill, which is, essentially you pay into $100 a month for the first 12 months that you're in service. You're making a $1,200 investment, and then essentially that unlocks the education benefit for the military member themselves.
Okay.
The post 9/11 GI Bill was passed, quite a few years ago, but now became eligible for anybody that did service in, the global war on terrorism or deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. That's automatically a benefit that you qualify for. And then just a couple of years back, there was a Supreme Court ruling to say that your Chapter 30 GI Bill and your post 9/11 GI Bill are two distinctly different benefits. So I thought I was, out of luck because I used my Chapter 30 to do my master's degree. So I thought my GI Bill was done, and then finding out that I have 36 additional months of of benefit for my post 9/11 GI Bill. That's what's funding this whole doctorate journey right now. I'm not paying out of pocket a dime for that.
So let me stop you right there. Okay, I want to make sure I track this correctly because I think this is very important. So you go into the military. Most youngsters, they go in the military and they have the GI benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know if you're jerking off and not doing your studies or whatnot, you get out of the military and you go and get your bachelor's, right? So you blow or you spend your GI Bill on getting your bachelor's, right?
Correct.
And then you're done. You can't use it anymore, right? That's a traditional route, right?
Yes.
And then uh, after post 9/11 individuals, they could get two cracks or two bites at the apple. So if they were to do the same thing, they could get their bachelor's paid for after they left the military, and then they can get their master's, right?
Correct.
Okay. But then you throw on your A type personality going above and beyond. You got your bachelor's in the military at a discount, right? So
Free.
then you're
It got paid
free.
for 100%.
100% paid for. Okay. So then you go the smart way, right? You're like, oh man, this guy's actually got some gray matter up here, right? And you get your bachelor's free. You get out, you use your traditional GI and the master's, and then you still have the post 9/11 GI Bill to use for your doctorate.
Absolutely.
That's crazy, and people are not
It's
really taking advantage of it, right?
no. There
But
is
but then
so
it
much money gets left on the table.
but then it goes even farther, right? Because you're saying that the post 9/11 GI Bill from our conversations and our pre-interview conversations, those can actually be used by a spouse or the children of a veteran, correct?
Correct. With a little bit of paperwork and files through the VA, you can transfer that benefit to an eligible spouse, or defer that benefit to your children. Yeah, it is a little bit of paperwork and red tape through the VA. It doesn't take much. If you really need help with that, you can get in touch with a veteran service organization in your area or your county veteran service officer. They can help you get that done. But yeah, a little bit of paperwork and you can give that benefit away. Or if you're fortunate enough to be in a state like California, there's an additional benefit that we'll talk about a little bit down the road here.
Okay. So now on this G on the post 9/11 GI Bill, so you get out of the military, and if you wanted to give that benefit immediately to your spouse, is that possible? Or is there a waiting period for the spouse to take advantage of it?
There's not a waiting period. If you get out and you've got eligible time left on your post 9/11, you file the paperwork, and then the spouse can enroll and get started right away. For the kids, they just have to be, obviously of age to be in school. So if your kids are in high school and you're not going to transfer to them for another 3-4 years,
Sure.
it's possible, but you've got a little bit of gap there until they're actually in school to be able to get the school. Because with post 9/11 GI Bill, the money doesn't go from the VA to you as the veteran to pay for it. They pay the school directly.
Okay, so earlier you were talking about how you were getting your doctorate because you were running out of time on your post GI Bill, post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, right?
Correct.
So if you are getting out of the military and your kid is say 5 years old and they still got another 12 years of schooling, are they going to be able to take advantage of that post 9/11 GI Bill, or when does that clock start ticking? Or can you
In
elaborate
a
on that?
hypothetical situation you produced, yes, because that would be thinking that somebody is a veteran that's separating now, right? So the
Right.
reason mine has a clock on it is because back in when they passed the forever 9/11 or the forever post GI Bill a couple of years ago, when they distinguished that it was a different benefit, um, they took the time off of it. So basically, there's a line in the sand date, and I don't remember if it's 2011 or 2012. And if you separated prior to that, you have 15 years to use that money. But if you
Ah, got
separated
you.
after that line in the sand, then that legal ruling basically made that benefit available to you forever for life.
Okay,
So
so
they
anybody,
had to
okay,
create a cutoff.
I'm tracking you. So anybody who has the post 9/11 GI Bill now and they get out of the military, there's no time limit on it. It
They're
can be
golden.
used, right? And if you have five kids can use it, or is it only one kid can use it? Do you know?
I would have to do my homework to figure out how many children would be able to do it, but if you had 5 kids and you wanted them all to go to school, you get your VA rating and you move to California and they all go to school for free anyway.
And through the UC or Cal State system, you mean,
Ruth,
or
UC, yeah,
okay?
community college, UC, or state school. If you've got a 0% VA disability rating or higher, your kids qualify for a tuition waiver for undergrad in the state of California.
That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely, because my kids are going to UC, state school, or community college on dad for free.
Well, you did recently did an interview, I think, with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Turner. I think he had the same last name as me. Does that sound? Am I misremembering? I don't
Yep,
remember his first
the
name.
doc chat,
The
absolutely.
doc chat, which was I was tripping out because I was like, oh, there's literally a podcast or a YouTube channel for every damn subject under the sun right now. So you were doing this interview with Dr. Turner, and you'd shared it on your platform on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, Ben's a buddy. I want to support what he's doing, so I gave it a listen. And it was during that conversation that I learned about some of these benefits that you're talking about. Which, and I have kids in the military, or we're in the military, or currently in the military, but I'm oblivious. I'm 46. I've got my master's. I'm not even thinking about my kids' benefits, right? And then you said something like you're getting your master's degree and the government's paying your rent or something. And I'm like, or your mortgage. I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? People need to know about this scam. I don't know.
It's not a scam, brother. It's not a scam. So the post 9/11 GI Bill is more than meets the eye, right? Because not only are they paying tuition to your school for you to be able to attend, you are getting the basic allowance for housing, the BAH rate at your locality,
That
paid
is
to you
insane.
monthly for every month that you're fully enrolled as a student. So
This is
I'm
insane.
literally getting my mortgage paid for every month that I'm in college.
Do people know this? Like, I just feel like I feel like I was living under a rock. I'm like, why isn't everybody going to military? Can I enlist? I mean, what is going on? Why are people going to the military so they can get free college, housing benefits? I don't. It's amazing.
It is, and there is only a small percentage of folks that max out everything that's available to them. It's kind of disappointing, and some of it has to do with some of the other issues of transitioning military, right, and some of the mental health issues and some of the
Yeah,
different things that are going on. But even the folks that are aware of it, it just disappoints me the fact that people know that they have these benefits and they just aren't interested in taking
squander it.
advantage of them. Yeah.
Yeah, they squander it. But I do have a little bit of a sad trombone. Maybe if I get my editing skills up, I can insert a sad trombone sound. I do believe that the post 9/11 GI Bill is no longer given out anymore. Right? Is that correct? Because I think because we am I wrong on that? I thought I
Let's
did a
see.
little research and I thought because we call all the troops home from the Middle East that we're kind of done with the 9/11 GI Bill. Do you know about that?
I would
Sorry,
have to
I
do
didn't mean to throw
some.
you a curveball.
No, that would have been awesome to research beforehand. I am not familiar with that, but
Okay.
I would have to do some homework on that to find out. But even if the post 9/11 was discontinued, there's still other programs through the VA. The Chapter 30 is still available. Then there's vocational rehabilitation. There's a ton of other programs that are still available and have very similar benefits to the post 9/11. But now you gave me some homework because I'm gonna have to go get educated to see what the deal is with that.
Well, you shared with me that you are currently in between sessions on your doctorate, and I figured, hey, this guy's got too much free time on his hand. I might go throw him a research assignment.
No, I appreciate that. I've already got
What?
like 2 other articles that I have to write for publication, so it's cool.
I'm like, what the hell does Ben do when he has so much free time on his hands when he's not in this doctorate program?
He signs up to do podcasts with you.
Oh man. So, you're talking about the California benefits, and obviously you're not an expert in every other state, but I would imagine that most states have other sort of types of benefits of some varying quality or degree. And I mean, I guess the message is that if you are in the military, were in the military, or your spouse was in the military, or your parents were in the military, and you're listening to this podcast, be a little bit more proactive in seeking out what those options might be, right? To see what you can tap into to benefit yourself.
Absolutely. And the power of Google is amazing, right? Like you can hit Google. It's not hard to turn up a listing of veteran benefits per state. So it doesn't matter if you're in Alaska all the way to Texas, right?
Right.
You can hit the internet. You can find out the benefits that are available to you in your local jurisdiction. It can be anywhere from as small as free fishing licenses to like California has, the benefit for college, right? I mean, and everything in between, right? Like I've
Right.
got national I've got my my state parks benefit. So because am a disabled veteran, I have a lifetime pass to national parks and Department of the Interior spaces. Those there's so many things that are available that people just don't know are available, and there's some things that are federal, there's some things that are state specific, but all you got to do is do a little bit of homework, and the list is a mile long. And we talked about this a little bit pre the show. Those can be great hiring incentives, right? Come check out our state or come check out our municipality. We're very veteran friendly, and these are the things that you can qualify for if you were to relocate to our state.
Right. In the green one, we were talking about, I'll pivot back to something real quick because you said, Google's your friend, right? Use Google. And I can tell you that when this podcast goes out, my buddy Micah Gaudet's going to be listening to it and be like, why didn't you plug Chat GPT? Have Chat GPT do some research for you on these veterans benefits, right? So I got to give a shout out to
I'm
Micah, my
still
buddy.
antiquated. I still Google's my best friend. I haven't upgraded yet.
It's pretty scary when Google's starting to get outdated, right?
I know,
Wow.
right? See, I think I've been in my academic setting, like Chat GPT is a curse word, so I can't say that too loud in the academic world.
But let's pivot a little bit to that public sector transition and recruiting veterans and whatnot. A lot of organizations have like these tuition reimbursement benefits that they might offer to employees. I'm not well versed in the subject matter, having never served my country before in that capacity. Do you know if organizations, generally speaking, as a rule, give veterans those benefits on top of their GI, almost like a payout, like a stipend or bonus, or is it one of those things that is almost just pivots and only used by those who weren't in the military? I mean, any insight on that?
So I think it matters to the organization, right? Whether you're paying out of pocket or not, right? So I can go back to my experience when I worked at a community college in Maryland, and I was on the Chapter 30 GI Bill at the time, so it wasn't being paid directly to the school; it was being paid as reimbursement to me after the class. So I was able to pay out of pocket for my class up front, file for reimbursement through the GI Bill, then file the tuition reimbursement with my employer, and I checked it all out with my tax professional, and I was completely legal because one was an employee benefit, one was a
Right.
military benefit. So I think there are a
So
lot of
you're
avenues
kind
for
of double
folks
dipping,
double
but
dipping,
I
right?
know that has like a negative connotation, especially in the California pension system. So I want to be careful. But
Yeah, yeah.
I guess my point would be on that is if you're in an HR department in an organization, or if you're a city manager of your organization, my viewpoint, and maybe I'm a little bit biased here because I have two children who have served or currently serving in the military, but they did pay out of pocket with their service time, and I think if you're a veteran and you're coming into a public organization, I don't think you should be denied those benefits. I think our organizations could be a little bit more creative if they're not giving those benefits to the veterans, to find a way of compensating them with financial bonuses or whatnot to offset that. Because why should I be denied that benefit just because I already got it through another means by actually sacrificing and serving my country? You know what I mean? That's a
No,
little bit of a
absolutely. I think
soapbox
there's
rant.
I think there's some validity there, right? And even if it's not, being seen as like a paycheck increase, right? Even if you were to say, okay, well, you've got your VA money coming in over here, do you have a spouse or a child that's currently in school, right? And being able to, pay that tuition, right? Because it's
Right.
not the employee directly, but kind of like for like, of if I was to take the post 9/11 GI Bill and transfer it to my spouse, she would go to school for free. Let me, pay the bill on your wife's tuition, because to the organization, they're not out of pocket any more than they would be if they were paying for the employee's tuition, right? I think there's a
Right.
lot of creativity that could be introduced into that
Agreed.
scenario, and it doesn't necessarily have to be padding the paycheck of the employee for
Right.
it still to be a positive.
That's an interesting perspective, and I thank you for adding that. I see it all the time on my LinkedIn where there's individuals who are leaving the military and coming into the public sector. I think it's fair to say I've been a pretty sharp critic of the ICMA when it comes to some of the things that I'm unhappy about. But I've heard really nothing but good things about the veterans program that the ICMA offers, and I believe you're a member of that, and I think you're a big supporter. And I like to be fair, so I'm going to criticize people in organizations when I think they deserve to be criticized, but I also want to amplify and praise and give an opportunity, a platform when people are doing things that I do think is great, and as somebody, like I said, not to belabor the point, but I have two children who serve or are serving. What do you think about the ICMA Veterans Program, and can you speak to that?
Yeah, so ICMA, started their Veterans Advisory Committee a couple years back in 2020, and being an ICMA member, I was able to jump on that and become a member of that committee. And really it's to raise awareness for veterans in local government and the knowledge, skills, and ability that transitioning veterans bring, and kind of bridge that succession planning gap for local government right now. I mean, you and I both know that talent pool is drying up, right? And
Right.
there's folks that just aren't even interested in looking at those types of jobs. And if there are qualified individuals that were a base commander or a base senior enlisted leader, and have the abilities to pivot out and be a impactful member of their local community's management structure, why not take advantage of those individuals? So I've been really happy with helping ICMA build their veterans programming. And again, we can like facets of an organization, we can dislike other facets of the organization. So I'm speaking just for the ICMA vets as my slice of the pie that I've got a vested interest in. But it really has been beneficial that they've built a transition program. They have a skills bridge agreement that's signed with the Department of Defense, which allows military members on their last 6 months of active duty to actually take off their uniform, still be paid by the government, still have all their DoD benefits, and basically come do an internship within a
Wow.
local government agency.
That's amazing.
um, and then we've got a pretty high success rate at the end as well of after they've done that internship, then they transition into a management analyst, a department director, an assistant city manager type role, those types of things that it's giving them a taste of local government. And then at the end, it's giving local government the opportunity to say, okay, you got first bite at the apple of this individual that has now proved to you what they can do. If you want to say no, they're going to take their show on the road, or do you want to hire them?
So kind of touching on that point, then are the only organizations that are allowed to participate in the 6 month skills bridge organizations that have a guaranteed spot for them after the internship, or can small towns throughout the country also offer this to individuals to give them a taste? Because there's a lot of need in small town, rural America, and so forth and so on. It's like, hey, man, we could use a professional individual with some skills to come in and maybe do something, add some value, right?
It's wide open. It's wide open.
Okay.
The only requirement is you sign a host agreement with the ICMA Veterans Organization, right? Because that's kind of the bylaws of you're going to give this individual structured, time and invest in them as far as, giving them exposure to different aspects of your organization and, letting them see your kind of your city council at work and all the different things like that, right? But the trade-off is you're getting that 6 months of skilled labor essentially. I have seen it where organizations at the end don't have a position to offer, right? They just allow the individual to come and intern there. But then that's where the network of that local government kicks into play, because there may not be a spot in that municipality, but maybe 3 cities over there is a spot, right? So you pick
Right.
up the phone as the city manager and you call the other city manager. You say, hey, I had this great experience for 4 months with this Air Force guy that just got out. He's looking for a career in local government. What do you got available? Well, I've got a supervisor for the wastewater facility available. Hey, are you interested? Yep, let's grease those wheels and get you over there.
If you're a city manager in an area around a base, this is a potentially a very powerful tool that you can use to augment your manpower. And the federal, basically, you're getting a federal grant to pay for an employee for 6 months, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
that's pretty amazing.
It is an amazing subsidy.
I'd be curious. This might be a little bit beyond the scope of this podcast, but I'm also wondering, with the difficulty in recruiting police officers, if there might be some sort of carryover benefit with MPs and things of that sort of nature. I don't know if that's I don't know with how that works with licensing and the reciprocity with each state. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's beyond the
We
scope of
could
this
we could go
podcast,
down
but
a whole rabbit hole of that, because there's a reason that after my 8 years as a military police officer, I pivoted away from becoming a cop on the outside, because essentially all of my qualifications training, I was an FBI hostage negotiator. I was certified at Quantico at the FBI Academy. All of my certifications were not honored by any local agency. They wanted me to start back over at the bottom, go through a police academy again, be a probie, do all that
is
stuff
that
all
is
over
that a
again.
state issue or a local government issue? Do you know?
I think it's counties all the way up, to be honest with you, because there was no reciprocity whatsoever for any of the skill sets that I had coming out of the military. And to
That's a
my
damn
knowledge,
shame.
even talking with current members that are in the same career field that are getting out, that needle hasn't moved at all.
I wonder what we got to do to move that needle. I mean, maybe there's some good reasons for why that's not the case. I don't know why, but that seems in this environment when we're struggling to recruit police officers throughout the country, that seems to be an unnecessary hurdle or obstacle. And maybe smarter individuals than I who are listening to this podcast, the two listeners that I have, maybe they can talk to their state legislator or something to figure out what the hell's going on. 'Cause that's pretty troubling. That's pretty troubling. So
Yeah, but that was really a decision point for me because I was a finalist when I got out of the military in Maryland. I was a finalist with Arlington County Police Department and a couple different East Coast agencies. And when the rubber met the road at the very end, I turned down positions because I just wasn't willing to start all over.
And you were ready and willing to stay with that profession. You didn't want to be. You weren't even thinking anything about being other than being a police officer, right?
Nope, because that's everything that I had done for the 8 years that I was in the military.
Yeah, that's amazing. And now here you are. Funny how your life just goes off in a different direction, right?
Absolutely.
Oh man. So let's talk a little bit more then about the actual transition from the from the military into the public sector, right? I'm a big fan of having more military and more just non-traditional applicants being brought into the city management profession as a general. I think we need some rejuvenation of new ideas and exposure to diversification, right? Diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, and I think there's a lot of powerful experiences and skills and things that military individuals are taught. They learn. What do you think about more military individuals or veterans coming into the profession? What kind of skills do they bring that you feel like local governments are sleeping on or should be maybe a little bit more aggressive in recruiting?
So one of the biggest things I think is underrated with military members is, their ability to promote diplomacy, right? You take a military member and you basically drop them anywhere in the world and they can get the job done, right? So when you think about, no matter what their job was, whether they were turning wrenches on an aircraft or whether they were deploying outside the wire and doing convoys or whatever the case may be, they have the ability to build bridges with a community that they may not even speak the same language with and still can provide value add to that community. So that's one of the hugest things that I think is an underrated quality of military members because they basically can take their show on the road anywhere and still get the mission done and still not disrupt the community that they're planted in.
Yeah.
But when we start to think about, some of the more traditional or out of the box type skills, right? Communication both up and down the chain, right? They know how to receive information, they know how to spread information, they know how to make it go parallel, sideways, diagonal, whatever it takes to get the mission done. And they also understand from being a member of the military that they're interchangeable, right? And I think
When
that's a
you say
huge.
interchangeable, what do you mean by that? I think I know what you mean, but can you?
When I say interchangeable, meaning that you basically are part of a bigger machine, right? So
Right.
if I'm an E5 and I have a certain skill set, they could trade me out, send me to a different base, take another E5, drop them into my spot, and the machine keeps rolling. And when
Right.
we think about that in terms of local government, that I feel like that's a needed skill set, to kind of be that Swiss Army knife that can kind of do whatever is asked of them, but at the same time isn't necessarily worried about the title, the fiefdom, the territory, anything that goes with that local government space, right? I've worked in local government now for about 10 years and I've run across a few individuals where information is power. And if I keep it to myself and
Absolutely.
I become the
Right.
sole proprietor of this process, if we know how to make widgets and I'm the only one that knows how to make this piece of the widget, then
You're
I have
supposedly more
job
valuable.
security, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Making people more flexible and interchangeable and being able to fill critical gaps, right? Like I had coming out of the military, I had police skills, right? So I can de-escalate conflict, I can deal with irate individuals, I know how to do all that stuff. I had no clue that that translated into a customer service role, right? Like I had no idea whatsoever. So I pivoted from being a cop and then doing security type work into working customer service and property taxes. And I was like, okay, I am a fish out of water. But what goes high when you're dealing with money? Blood pressure, yelling, screaming,
Right.
irate, emotions, right?
Yeah.
And all of those tools that I had in my toolbox, I was able to put to work and realize, okay, I may not be carrying a gun or a badge anymore, but I still am doing the exact same type of thing, just in a different environment.
Yeah, that's I want to touch on this for a quick moment. One of the things I think that military individuals struggle with the most is trying to translate what they did in the military to civilian life. Because I see some military resumes and they're getting better over the years. I think there's been more outreach and there's more LinkedIn influencers who cater to that demographic and so forth and so on. But it's just like what did you just put on your resume? What are you doing? Like, what is that? Like, you know what I mean? Can you speak English to me? Like,
Absolutely. It's a whole line of acronyms that mean absolutely nothing to whoever's reading it. It looks like it's written in code.
well, the titles themselves are irrelevant. I have no idea what this even means. Like this, your job title, let alone what you did. Like, so I think you guys are improving in that area. I think it goes with outreach and education or whatnot, right? But write your resume and your cover letter in a way that the civilian can understand it.
Well, and that's part of these emerging organizations, right? Going back to plug ICMA veterans, right? We're able to then tell them, okay, well, if you were a garrison commander, nobody knows what a garrison is, right? So what were you? Oh, you were a base commander.
Garrison, is that Civil War? Is that Revolution? What are you talking about? Garrison? What are you talking about? The War of
It's
1812? What are we talking
right,
about here?
exactly. But if you're a garrison commander, you're essentially a base commander, so you were responsible for a community. You probably had your own police department, your own fire department, all
Quasi
these things.
city manager,
So
right?
you were a city manager, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
garrison commander does not translate in English to city manager, right?
Right. Absolutely. But it's funny you say that because I forgive me, I have an individual who is one of my followers or connections who actually has Garrison, I believe Garrison slash city manager on their LinkedIn bio or something like that.
Lance O'Brien.
Is that who that is? It might be.
That's
I don't know.
it's probably Lance O'Brien. He's at
But shout
Fort
out to
Knox.
Lance. Okay, shout
He's
out to
at Fort
Lance then.
Knox. Yeah, he
'Cause I even
understands.
yeah, I asked him one time, I'm like, what the hell does Garrison city manager mean? He's like, oh, Garrison's like a city manager. That's why I have it. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Makes it very clear.
Absolutely, he is the base commander of Fort Knox, so he is responsible for everything that goes on there, and it's essentially his own little self-contained city.
Well, he's learning the lessons of ICMA or whoever else is giving him some good counsel. So that was awesome.
Absolutely,
I want to touch on something a little bit kind of sensitive. I mean, you know me, I'm unfiltered, and
absolutely.
I don't have any problem going after some taboo topics or whatnot. I will tell you that, and even I, to a little bit degree, sometimes can have this perspective. There is a sense sometimes with other city managers I've talked to that individuals who come out of the military think that they should just automatically parachute into a city manager role, and we're like, hold up, sucker! Like, we put your time in, all right? Put your dues in, right? And they're probably thinking, I put my time in. I did 20 years in the military and whatnot, right? But do you understand this dynamic of what I'm talking? I'm not sure how to PC it up or whatever, but there's an element of folks who are like, hey, these military guys, they think they're on their own shit, so to speak, and they need to like slow the roll. Can you
I'm
speak to
a
that maybe a little
hundred
bit?
percent with you. So
Okay,
just a caveat. I got out of the military after 8 years. I was an E5, a staff sergeant, right? So I was just a middle of the road, suit line level supervisor, just getting stuff done, right? So there is a thought out there that if you've gotten to like E7 or above, which is considered a senior NCO, or you've made it to a field grade officer, which is basically O4 or above, that all of a sudden you're entitled to things when you get out of the military, and that
yeah,
rank or that title that you carried in the military is just going to land you something on the outside. And forgive me for all my senior enlisted connections and military connections that I have out there, but you guys know that this follows you around, that you cannot just automatically parlay that into, well, I was a colonel in the military and I was responsible for billions of dollars of government assets and I had 30,000 people under my command, and I'm going to tell you that I'm going to be the director of whatever. It's like, sometimes that's not how it works. And
amen, amen.
one of the things that I love the most is kind of that 6 month fellowship that ICMA does, is because it brings them into an organization and it humbles them, because at that point in time they don't have a rank. They are a glorified intern essentially. So you might be getting your colonel pay, right? But right now you're going to work in risk management for a week, and then we're going to take you over to public works and show you what public works does, and we're going to bring you around. And for some individuals that light bulb goes on and they're like, oh, I see how like I'm not qualified, even though I think that I've done all these things to work with a council and be the city manager or even the deputy city manager, right?
Right.
Maybe I need to slow my roll and start out as a manager or a department director, so that way I can make my chops and cut my teeth. And I think that we're breaking some of that stigma down, but it's still healthy. It still is
Yeah,
very healthy.
yeah.
And I have those conversations constantly with individuals that want to connect with me on LinkedIn about, okay, do your homework on the organization. You might be the biggest fish in the pond in your military world, but nobody knows a darn thing about you, where you're going. So humble yourself and be willing to learn from whatever teacher appears, and you'll go pretty far.
And I think the other thing too about that, Ben, is that the reality is that leading other individuals who are in the military, right, who are used to that structure, that rigidity, so the chain of command, so forth and so on, it's a little bit different than when you're going with civilians, right, and trying to,
It's like a cat rodeo, right?
Oh man, I just had to get that in there. I
No,
gotta,
absolutely.
I gotta throw some hardballs. I got to come in high and tight every now and then. So
No, I get it completely. And it's, like I said, I think we're getting better, but
yeah,
getting is still a process, right? There are still
yeah,
individuals that have done their 30 something years in the military, are wearing a whole bunch of brass on their shoulder, and
yeah.
automatic when they come out, they need a king crown and a scepter in civilian world. And that's not how it's going to work.
Hey, and I'm not some American flag burning hippie here. You know what I mean? My kids are, I'm pro military. My kids are in the military, but I guess got to call the balls and strikes. You know what I mean? I got to call the balls and
Absolutely.
strikes. Another shameless plug, which is kind of funny. This is completely stream of conscious. Another podcast review on there says that I'm Joe's the umpire or whatever. So I'm calling the balls and strikes. Okay, and we're getting up to an hour here, but I wanted to pivot to something that I think is really important and that I've seen you working on another little side project or passion project, and that is this organization about building brotherhood and community called Here Brotherhood, I believe. It really resonated with me because I've been looking at it, and it's just like I said, resonated with me a little bit. And one of the reasons why it's resonating with me is because I've talked about building community for city manager, right? One of the three main goals I've talked about is building city manager community or whatnot, building community for public sector executives, as well as also helping with the personal and professional development, and then also advocacy on behalf of the city managers professional, right? And so my feed has been blowing up with this Here Brotherhood thing, and I was wondering if you could maybe break down and tell us what it's all about. I don't know. I don't think you're an official ambassador per se. You're not in a leadership position, as I understand it. You're just sort of a believer, I think. Though my only contact with the organization has been through your posts, and I've been sort of impressed with what I've seen. So why don't you just break it down for us?
Absolutely. So just to lay the groundwork on it, social media can be the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world. There can be a lot of toxicity that comes with social media and the haters and the trolls that show up. And really what the Here Brotherhood is attempting to create is an organic community targeted towards men to support men's mental health.
Let me
And
stop you there. When you the Here Brotherhood, what does that mean? What what are we
so
talking about?
I am here to hear. So
Okay,
here, HEARE
okay,
is the first word, and it is he with ear in the middle. It just basically means a man that's willing to listen.
okay. HEARE. Here.
Yes.
Okay.
So what that means is that in the men's mental health space, right, there's this a lot of stigma out there that we just have to suck it up, suffer in silence. We just had to put on that machismo and just do life, right? And it doesn't matter how much we get crapped on or how much stuff we have to deal with. We're just supposed to suck it up and just keep going.
Be a man.
Be a man, right? Buck up, pull up your
Yep.
bootstraps, and just get on, right? And really what this grassroots community, and it's 100% organic at this point, there's not venture capitalists or funding or anything at this point involved in this. It's really a couple of guys that got together and said there's no space to create a support media app that exists currently, right? So what they did was essentially created a support media app for men. Demographic target is about 25 to 55, right? That don't have to carry that baggage of being a man by themselves. It's a free space to be able to celebrate wins, share vulnerability, connect with other dudes, and really not be judged for what's going on between the ears, and just kind of put it out there. And you'd be surprised how many dudes you find that are just trudging the same path that you are and having the same thoughts that you're having. And it's not as easy as it seems. Like we see everything on social media that looks like all butterflies and rainbows,
Right.
and
Everything's the
and it's
best
not.
version of ourselves, right? So it's the best manufactured, curated version of ourselves, and it's absolute horseshit, right?
Right. So I've been leaning in really hard to this because I've got my own demons that I've wrestled with my PTSD and some of the different things, my challenges that I have, and just I really, this piqued my interest, and I joined up with them. I am a mentor within the app, so I engage with folks. I take DMs and just engage with folks that are struggling, or help to celebrate guys that are want to share a win and don't want to put it out, on their regular social media because they're afraid they'll get poked at or whatever the case may be. But sometimes a win can just be like, look, my 14-year-old got lippy with me and I didn't punch him in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
those are real things too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing that's important to talk about this with respect to the brotherhood and whatnot is, we're in this really crazy time right now where it's almost like I'm gonna go on another rail here where I might just piss off some people, but we're veering off into toxic feminism. It's like I'm not gonna put you on the spot there and have you. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I'm not trying to conscript anybody to my battles, okay? But you know, it's okay to be a man. All right, it's okay to be a man, and men should have their own spaces to be able to interact and fellowship with each other. And we got some really, in my opinion, some destabilizing forces at work right now that are tearing down men and male spaces and whatnot. And I think the pendulum is swung too far in the opposite direction. I think it was needed for there to be a correction, but I think it's gone to one extreme now. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, male bonding and brotherhood isn't about cracking open a beer and hanging out the bar and shooting pool. Okay, like that's just whatever stereotypical idea of brotherhood or playing grab ass or whatever it is. Right? We got to realize that we can have more sustaining, and I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but we can have more fulfilling and constructive engagement.
Intentional,
Yeah, with each other, right?
intentional,
Yeah,
right?
right. And it's like we don't have to put on these masks or these the facades of I'm Mr. Badass or I'm Mr. Tough Guy or I got everything together. It's like we can actually be real, right? And say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I really want to do this, or men and women, we bond completely differently, right? And I would say that men generally don't bond very well in general, right? As far as healthy ways of bonding, right?
Right.
Because we have these fears of being vulnerable, and I think this all kind of relates to what I've been doing a little bit on this whole journey that I'm on with the City Manager Unfiltered podcast and on the LinkedIn is, I've talked about city managers feeling alone and those in the public sector feeling alone or isolated at times. And I do feel like the more I post, the more I put myself out there, I'm getting responses back from individuals who are grateful that these conversations are having and feeling like they can unload on me and some of the things that they're thinking or their fears or their concerns. They just got fired or they're on the verge of being fired and they're looking for advice and counsel. And I just think it's like I'm 46 years old. I'm not 26. I'm not 16. I don't have time for this dumb shit anymore. Like I just want to have real relationships. I want to have real connections with people. I want to be helping people whenever I can. And that's why I think the here brotherhood really appealed to me when I was looking at it from afar, because I'm like, man, that's something I'm trying to create, or in a sense, for city managers and public sector executives. So that's why I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that and give you a platform to communicate what you're doing with that organization.
Absolutely. And it allows for a little bit of validation, right? Just so that way you're not crazy and crawling out of your own skin and you're not the only one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's funny you say that, because some of the feedback I get is like, man, it's nice to know that I'm not the only one going through this. I post an article about some crazy situation happening in some state and they go, man, I've been through that, or I'm so happy I'm not the only one going through that. So yeah, man, I'm really a big fan of what you're doing. One is you're always pushing the ball forward and advancing yourself, right? You're always trying to improve yourself and make yourself better. But beyond that, you're also constantly trying to help other people be better. And I just think you're a model for what others should, strive to be, right? And I'm happy that we had this opportunity to converse and discuss the things that you're working on. And I know that you're very much willing to put yourself out there and help others. So I assume that if someone's thinking about going through a doctorate program or they're in the middle of it and they need a pep talk, I'm sure they can reach out to you. You would love to help them out as much as you can, right?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to set up a call, get coffee, whatever we got to do. If I can share some experiences and help you not step into some of the same potholes that I did, I'm game.
Hey, Ben, you're an inspiration to me. I appreciate you dropping some knowledge in this podcast, things I didn't know about, wasn't aware of, and I think a lot of the people who are listening aren't aware of. And thank you for sharing some time with me. And I don't know if you have any final words or parting comments, but hey, it's been a blast, and thank you so much.
Absolutely a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Joe.
All right, Ben Effinger. He's with LA County, working his way up the chain. Going to be Mr. Professor in a few years at the doctorate he's going after. And thank you all very much for listening. This is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast by a city manager for city managers and other public sector executives. Until next time, later.